it. Several authors contacted me, and I just didn't feel like it," said Nelson. "But lately, many of my family members have tried to get me to tell my story." R.C. also said that some authors have even alleged that he was, quote, "involved in the conspiracy." "I wasn't," Nelson said. Well, there you go, right there. He said he wasn't. "I want my family to have something recorded so my great-grandkids will know the real facts. It's been 50 years on a cold, sunny November day in 1963. It became such a nightmare that tens of millions of Americans can still tell you exactly where they were. I can't. When they heard the news." For R.C. Nelson, the memories of the day Camelot died are still crystal clear. And you can see that story on miami.cbslocal.com. You know, I usually don't read a lot of the user comments here. Let's see here. Usually I overlook this stuff. There's sometimes a lot of interesting stuff here, and I don't see anything here about conspiracy. Apparently someone let Ruby in beforehand. I'm still waiting for someone to explain the pristine bullet. That's a question I got. I got the same idea. Pristine bullet. Have you seen Oliver Stone's JFK movie? It's interesting. It's interesting, but there's an element to that. I don't have it in my little picture gallery that I was going to show you today. There's a clip. If you watch JFK, Oliver Stone's movie, get a bleeper handy because it needs bleeping. But there is a scene where the New Orleans District Attorney, what's his name, played by whoever it is. I can't think of names right now. But he's having a meeting in Washington, D.C. with somebody who's in the government, who apparently is a whistleblower of some kind, who's trying to tell him that he's on the right track, but there's things you're missing here. It's a big cover up, and he asked the question. You have to ask the question: who wanted him dead? Who had the means to cover it up? Who did it? Who? And then there's this big, what they call a pregnant pause right in the film, and it just shows these two characters on a park bench in front of something. And you go watch that movie, and when you figure out that little pregnant pause and the symbolic value that it has, you'll go, wait a minute, I think there's something going on here. Let me read you something. By the way, I'll go through this, and if we have time, we'll look at some emails. I got people asking me to read more emails. Pastor Mike, would you please read some more emails? I'm going to try. I really am. But let me kind of go to some things. Some of this is some information that I've been gathering over the years. I have been meaning to, for the past 4 years, my good intentions have been to make a video called Dealey Plaza Decoded, because I've been just gathering a ton of stuff. And if you know my work before, it's a lot of symbols, a lot of numbers, and things like that. And there is a biblical justification for that. Do I believe a conspiracy was in place November 22nd, 1963, Dallas, Texas, at Dealey Plaza? And the answer is absolutely yes. Do I know any of the names of anybody who's behind it? I don't know. Do I know how many shots were fired? 3 that I can verify. Was there a 4th one? Probably. Could be. My issue is I don't have the proof. I don't have the evidence. I don't have a document. I don't have a piece of film. I don't have a picture. I don't have a sworn testimony of a dying man saying, I was the killer. I have been to Dealey Plaza. I've stood behind that picket fence. It's still there. Most of the scene there is still pretty much the way it was 1963. I've stood behind that picket fence. Gary was with me. Gary, come here. I'll show you something. If I was a killer and I was going to blow the head off of some guy coming down Elm Street, a nightmare on Elm Street, I would stand right here and do it. Because if you've never been there, there is, and I guess the City of Dallas preserves this. There's a white X in the pavement. It's not just painted on. It's like grooved down in the pavement. There's a white X there that marks the exact spot where the kill shot took place. You know, his brains blowing out all over the place. It's right, there's a big X there. And if you stand behind that white picket fence and you look, you're looking at, I just came back from deer season. I would have loved to have had that shot on a deer this weekend. Didn't see anything. It was slim pickings this year is what it was. But as a hunter looking for a target, doesn't get any better than that. It doesn't get any better than that. So, was there someone behind that picket fence? If I was picking a spot to assassinate somebody, that would be one of the spots I would look at. The JFK movie, they make an interesting observation. If you go up to the 6th floor repository, where Oswald apparently or allegedly was, you look out the window where they say he took his shots from. He was like at the corner of the building, and he had another window view of the president's limo coming right down toward him, and they're going, why didn't he do it from here? As he's coming toward him, instead of taking a chance waiting on him going past him. And I'm going, I'm not an assassin, but that makes a lot of sense. So anyway, was there more than 3 shots? Could very well be. I don't have the evidence. I don't have the bullets. I don't have the people. I don't have anything like that. There's been, how many books have been written on JFK? How many books, how many movies have been made? How many documentaries? The United States Congress, back in the 70s, apparently there was so much controversy over the Warren Report that the United States Congress opened up a brand new series of meetings, the House Select Committee on Assassinations. They were looking at JFK, they were looking at RFK, they were looking at Martin Luther King. They were going, there's just something going on here where it seems like political assassination this is what you do in America in the 60s. And they were looking into it realistically, analyzing the audio tape, analyzing film, and analyzing, measurements and things like that. And they concluded in the 70s, we think the Warren Report's not right. We think there is a conspiracy there. Do we know what it was? Have no idea. So that's how that came out. And so I believe it. I believe that there was a conspiracy. I believe that there was more than one shooter. I believe that there was more than one person involved in this. When you have the guy who is the one arrested for killing the president, pulling the trigger, and in front of television as he's transferred from one jail to the next, he gets his guts blown out in front of everybody so he doesn't talk. You got a guy linked into the Chicago Mafia, Jack Ruby. That just stinks. It absolutely stinks of there's something going on here. So, you know what? If you have a theory about JFK, number one, email it to me. I'd like to see what you've got to say. Number two, if you believe that there was something going on there, that the Warren Report just didn't get it right, I don't think you're crazy. I really don't think you're crazy. At least not for that reason. You're not crazy. You might be nuts for something else, but not for that. I think it's realistic. I think that it is a valid question that comes up in people's minds who both were there. Me being born out of due time. I wasn't born I didn't know that time. But I look at it historically and go, there's something not right here. But then you bring the idea, let's ask the question, number one, are there conspiracies? So I tell you what we do. Let's take a walk down old Route 66, shall we? The 66 books of our King James Bible. In Psalm chapter 2, here's what the Bible says. Why do the heathen rage, and the people imagine a vain thing? Now, here's the vain thing that they're imagining. The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together. That is a conspiracy theory, or that is a conspiracy. It is a group of people who have set themselves, and they're taking counsel together. And what are they just talking about? Hey, what is your favorite restaurant? You ought to try the soup at this place. This is oh my goodness. It's like $40 a bowl, but I'm telling you, you'd pay double for it. That's not what they were doing. They had an agenda. And I want you to notice the language I'm using the King James, by the way. I want you to notice the language of the Bible. It does not say here in Psalm 2 that the kings of the earth did at one time in the past take counsel together. It doesn't say that they are going to. It says that they do it. So we know this was written in David's time, about 1,000 years before Christ, some 3,000 years ago. So apparently in David's day, the kings of the earth and the rulers were taking counsel together, even back then, 3,000 years ago. We know for a fact that they were doing it in Christ's day. The Sanhedrin was meeting, the rulers were meeting together to discuss the Lord and his anointed. You know, that's Christ. They were discussing him, how they might eliminate him. And here's the interesting thing. They were looking for a scapegoat, a patsy. That's what Oswald said. I'm a patsy. Okay. They were looking for a patsy. So they found Judas Iscariot. And he said, you know what? I can get him for you. I can do it. Okay. What's your cost? 30 pieces of silver. Done deal. Okay. And that's what there was a conspiracy against this Bible verse is right. It is right. There was a conspiracy against the Lord's anointed at the time of his coming. But notice the language here. It's not set in the past. It's not set in the future. It is an ever-present idea. It runs all throughout history that there is an ongoing conspiracy against the Lord and against